Most people don't intend to ruin their own lives, but the path to destruction is often built from subtle, nearly invisible steps. There's a harsh and often unspoken truth about married women that escapes most men's understanding. It's this very truth that makes them such easy targets. Not because they're morally flawed, not because they're weak, but because temptation is part of human nature. Nobody wakes up and says, "Today I'll destroy everything I've created." Instead, it starts in tiny, seemingly harmless moments, the casual talks, the slight hesitation before a glance, the faster heartbeat when she gets a message from someone who isn't her husband. Psychologists have studied this for years. They call it the gradual erosion of boundaries, bit by bit, thought by thought, until one day, she sees her reflection and barely recognizes the woman staring back. So what makes some married women so susceptible to outside influence? And more importantly, how do they rationalize it to themselves? That's exactly what we're about to uncover. Let's dive in. 1. The silent void. Why married women crave external attention. You can't have a great marriage without partnership. Helen Mirren. When it's strong, marriage becomes a deep bond that survives time, hardship, and desire. But not all relationships keep that strength. Some women, even while honoring their vows, begin to crave attention from outside their marriage. And it's rarely just about physical appeal. In most cases, it's psychological. The mistake people often make is assuming these women are escaping something. But more often, they're chasing something that slipped away. Humans are made for connection. For women especially, emotional intimacy is just as necessary as physical closeness. In the early days, marriage is electric. The deep talks, the flirtatious looks, the feeling of being seen. But then, the routine creeps in. Life becomes repetitive. Those passionate conversations turn into reminders about groceries or who's picking up the kids. Romance turns into responsibility. And worst of all, she starts to feel unseen. That's where the danger creeps in. Dr. John Gottman, a legendary psychologist in relationships, says that it's not conflict that kills love, it's indifference. When a woman no longer feels acknowledged by her partner, her subconscious begins searching elsewhere, sometimes without her even knowing it. People will do almost anything to avoid loneliness, even if it means losing themselves. Mitch Albom. Sometimes all it takes is a kind word from a stranger, a conversation where someone actually listens, a brief moment where she feels captivating again. And that moment, it feels like oxygen after years of holding her breath. Marriage provides security, stability, and structure. But the flip side of stability is the death of surprise. In psychology, it's known as the Coolidge effect. Novelty triggers desire. If each day is a repeat, if every conversation feels scripted, then even the smallest spark of newness can feel like lightning. Not because she doesn't love her husband, not because she's unfaithful at heart, but because she longs to feel wanted again. We're most alive when in love. But love isn't just about being there. It's about choosing one another over and over again. F. Scott Fitzgerald. When she feels desired, when she feels powerful in someone else's gaze, it brings back a version of herself she thought was gone. The confident, carefree, magnetic version. So even if she never intends to step over the line, she may start walking closer to it, because in those fleeting moments, she feels alive. There's another layer most overlook, the loss of identity. After marriage, many women begin to feel less like individuals. Instead, they become roles. A wife, a mother, a caretaker. Before marriage, she had her own story, her dreams, her passions. After marriage, her story gets written around everyone else's. These roles are meaningful, but they can also feel confining. When she stops feeling like herself, she starts searching for anything that reconnects her to that person. And sometimes, that anything comes in the form of another man. 2. The justification trap. When the mind defends what the heart has chosen, nobody wakes up and thinks, "Today, I'll betray my marriage." It's never sudden. It doesn't explode, it leaks. A married woman doesn't jump into danger. She slides into it, slowly, silently. And long before the actions happen, the mind has already made room for the excuses. Why? Because guilt is too heavy to carry. But if she convinces herself, that nothing is wrong. Then she doesn't have to carry it at all. It starts off as nothing. It's just attention. There's no harm in talking. I'm just enjoying the moment. But the mind, it's a master at lying to itself. When something feels good but goes against your values, the brain starts building bridges to make both coexist. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, that unsettling feeling when actions and beliefs don't match. To ease the discomfort, the brain reshapes reality. The easiest person to fool is yourself. Richard Feynman. So what happens? She begins to minimize it. It's just a little flirting. It's harmless. Then she shifts the blame. If he cared more, I wouldn't need this. Then she splits it from her marriage entirely. This has nothing to do with him. This is for me. But here's the twist. The more she explains it away, the deeper she goes. Most affairs don't start with a touch. They start with a thought. They start with a feeling. They start with emotional intimacy. And that's what makes it more dangerous. With physical cheating, lines are clear. But when it's emotional, that's where it gets blurry. Late-night texts, personal stories, vulnerability she once shared only with her husband. The moment she starts hiding these parts of herself, she's already left the marriage in spirit. Cheating doesn't begin in the bedroom. It begins when you start keeping secrets. And eventually, a new belief forms. I deserve this. The most dangerous lie is the one that feels justified. I've given up so much. I deserve happiness again. He's ignored me for years. Why should I care anymore? I've stayed loyal and it got me nothing. At this point, she no longer sees her actions as betrayal. She sees them as fairness. And once a person believes something is fair, they'll fight for it like it's truth. 3. The breaking point. When the habit becomes unbreakable. The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. Samuel Johnson. Every story like this has a turning point. A moment when it's no longer just texts or feelings. It becomes real. The terrifying part? Most women don't notice it when it happens. Psychology calls it the threshold theory. The first time is always the hardest, but once that line is crossed, each step afterward is easier. That first text she shouldn't send. The first meetup that's just as friends. The first touch that lingers a little too long, and she doesn't pull away. That's when the shift happens. We are what we repeatedly do. Aristotle. What once seemed forbidden now feels familiar. The biggest lie we tell ourselves on destructive paths. I can stop whenever I want. But once emotions get involved, stopping isn't that easy. Studies show that love and lust activate the same brain circuits as drug addiction. That rush, the excitement, the high of being desired again, it becomes addictive. So even if she swears, this is the last time, she'll find a reason to return. Because at this point, it's no longer about the man. It's about the feeling. At first, lying feels wrong. Deleting messages, making excuses, her heart racing when asked, "Who are you texting?" But the mind adjusts. It adapts. Soon, the guilt becomes strategy. The secrecy becomes routine. And the lies? She starts believing them. She'll tell herself she'll stop. Next week. Next month. Eventually. But time passes. And eventually, she's stuck in her own web. Then the final shift occurs. She no longer sees her husband as her partner. He becomes the other man. The real connection? That's happening somewhere else. And at that point, even without physical betrayal, her heart already belongs to someone else. From here, there are only two ways out. She gets caught, or she walks away from her marriage, unable to keep living a double life. So why are married women sometimes the easiest prey? Not because they're immoral, not because they planned it, but because they're searching for something they lost. And once they believe they found it, letting go feels impossible. Not due to a lack of love for their husband, but because what they've found feels like something they'll never reclaim at home. And when that belief takes root, nothing looks the same again. If you understand this truth, you hold power. The power to see what others miss, to read between the lines, to recognize the quiet red flags before they spiral. And with that awareness, you'll never fall blind to the game again.